Good day, friends, and welcome once again to the Financial Literacy Foundation. This is the Financial Literacy Teachings brought to you by the Financial Literacy Foundation in partnership with MTW. First of all, let me thank my spiritual parents, Pastor Joylene, who is my senior pastor, and my general overseer, Pastor Strike, both at Mana Tabernacle. Thank you very much, parents, spiritual parents. I really appreciate, and thank you for giving us such an opportunity and building such a bridge for us to be able to get to the other side of our lives. May God bless you, and may God richly increase you and increase your territory. Friends, this is day 14 of our financial literacy episodes. Today, we want to talk more and continuing on our last week's session, which is understanding our medical schemes. We spoke last week, but as we spoke last week, we were continuing on our quest and our talk about developing a balanced financial plan. A financial plan or a balanced financial plan is one that will be able to stand in our lives when any circumstances of life demands, be it emergencies, be it sickness, be it retirement, be it anything that calls on our doors for us to open, we should be able to stand, and you can be able to build that and be able to have a strategy on how you respond to such a thing. My friends, medical expenses, it's one of those major things that knocks on our doors in one or in several times of our lives. Are we ready for it? And I would like to say, having a medical aid, it's a response or it is a preparation towards such events where medical conditions knocks on our doors and we have to incur expenses in order to resolve that. God has given us life, but He has given us the responsibility as well to take care of our lives, to take care and be responsible of our lives. So medical aids are some of those important things that we need to have in our lives in order to be able to respond to medical challenges that we face upon our lives. So I will encourage you, this is the second part of the two-part series of understanding your medical scheme. So if you missed last week's session, I will encourage you, my brother and my sister, my mom and my dad, that please go back. Even if you are to pause this session for now and firstly go back to the last week's session, because you will be able to copy and comprehend to be able to continue with today's session. What do we want to talk about today? We want to talk about what we left out last week. And what did we talk about last week? We spoke about the differences between life insurance plans and medical aids. We spoke about the relevant laws that governs these two sides of, or these two worlds of life planning, which is simply to say, what are the laws that governs these two? The other part is governed by Long-Term Insurance Act, and the other part is governed by the Medical Schemes Act. The other part is governed by the Financial Services Conduct Authority, and the other part is governed by the Council for Medical Schemes Act. The other part pays directly unto you upon diagnosis, whereas the other part pays for the treatment of whatever condition that you may have suffered. And lastly, we said the other part pays the sum of money unto your pocket, whereas the other part pays an actual expenses and it pays directly to the service provider. These are some of the things that we spoke about last week. We also looked at how medical schemes operate, or how do medical schemes work. Remember, these sessions are not about the medical or life insurance policies or medical insurance policies, but it is more about medical aids or medical schemes. Hence, we are doing those parallel analysis. But we spoke with regard to medical aids that we've got different ways on how we can look at medical aids. One of those is how do we understand in terms of their benefits. We said one of those benefits is the major medical benefits. Major medical benefits refers to the benefits that you get out of medical aids. We spoke about chronic benefits. We spoke about the day-to-day benefits. We spoke about the hospitalization benefits. All of these are the how part and how do you structure your medical aids. We also spoke about hospital plans within the medical aids as one of the characters of medical aids. And we did say that hospital plans covers your major medical benefits and it also covers your emergency medical benefits, over and above covering your hospitalization. So these are some of the things I'm just highlighting so that you can know what to look for when you go back to our session last week. We want to continue on that and say, what more can we talk about when we speak of medical aids? Today, we want to talk about more things. And the first of that today, it is to understand what do we mean by prescribed medical benefits. Prescribed minimum benefits, I beg your pardon. What do we mean by prescribed minimum benefits? So what is that and how does it come about? What do we need to understand in that? Prescribed minimum benefits are your guaranteed benefits which you get out of a medical aid. And you get these benefits whether you are in hospital or you are out of hospital. So in other words, you find the prescribed minimum benefits within the comprehensive medical scheme. You also get your prescribed minimum benefits even on your hospital plans. And hospital plans, as we spoke about last week, it is the type of a medical aid that only covers you when you are hospitalized. So this is very important to understand. So medical schemes, simply put, ensures that medical aids pays for the most important benefits in our lives when it comes to our health issues. And the most important benefits are defined within the major medical benefits. So it covers your prescribed minimum benefits and it pays medical aid. They pay for the major prescribed minimum benefits in full. In other words, you are not supposed to have co-payments and things like that when we talk of the prescribed minimum benefits. And they are covered even when you don't have the day-to-day benefits. Day-to-day benefits are the type of benefits that you get when we look at things like going to see a doctor on a regular basis or when you visit a doctor for simple consultations. We call that day-to-day benefits simply because these are benefits that you don't need serious or major sicknesses to be able to consult a doctor. It may be a flu. It may be a pain in whatever part of your body. You are able to go and see a specialist or a doctor to be able to get advice on how to deal with such kind of a condition. Now, medical aids will prescribe where you may receive your prescribed minimum benefits. In other words, prescribed minimum benefits, whether it is on a hospital plan or it is on a comprehensive plan. But what we need to understand is that prescribed minimum benefits, medical aids can determine or can prescribe where you should be able to obtain such benefits. And such, we call that a designated service provider. This does not mean that you do not get the prescribed minimum benefits if you are not using a designated service provider. But it simply means that when you are making use of designated service provider, there will be certain advantages that you may enjoy by so doing. And what are some of those things? Let us first understand what do we mean by designated service providers. In so doing, we want also to be able to understand what happens if you do not make use of designated service providers. Now, a designated service provider, it's a healthcare provider. This may be a doctor or a hospital or a pharmacy. That is suggested or recommended by your medical aid for you to use when you incur certain medical conditions, be it on a diagnosis basis or on a treatment basis. So in other words, designated service providers are the service providers. Remember, by service providers, we are referring to the doctors, we are referring to the clinics, we are referring to the hospitals, we are referring to the medical schemes. We are referring to the pharmacies or chemists where we get the medication. Now, this is where we get treatment or we get our diagnosis. Now, these are the institutions or persons that have got a relationship which is pre-arranged with the medical aids, so that when the member of a medical aid visits them, they attend to them and charge them according to the prescribed or predetermined rates, or simply put, rates that are not above certain limits to be able to get such kind of service. They've got contractual arrangements with medical aids. We are talking about designated service providers. Service providers of that kind have got pre-arrangement with the medical aids to say, we will charge up to this level. So that simply means if you're not making use of designated service providers, there may be rates above the levels that your medical aid is willing to pay. We'll talk more about that as we go. Simply put, should you make use of a designated service provider for your treatment or for your diagnosis, there may be what we call co-payment that may be subjected to you upon the use of such service. What is a co-payment? Co-payment is whereby when your service provider or the doctor charges so much, but the medical aid is only willing to pay so much, which is less than what the service provider is charging. The difference between the two, we call that a co-payment. And co-payment can be as much as 30% of the total bill that the service provider or the doctor or a hospital, be it whatever the case may be, that they are charging. So it is important, friends, for us to be able to understand, do my medical aid have DSPs or designated service providers? If they do, who are those? Do you know that some of the designated service providers are around you? It is only that you did not know, or you do not know that they are a designated service providers. In so doing, to identify them, you could find yourself saving a lot of money within your medical aid. Remember, we get those things where we hear that my medical aid is exhausted, it is finished, and so on and so on. Some of these things are caused by us not knowing or not making use of designated service providers. So, continuing speaking about the prescribed minimum benefits, let us also say, should we say that prescribed minimum benefits according to the Act, the Medical Schemes Act, prescribed minimum benefits are supposed to be paid in full by the medical aids. But should you not make use of the designated service providers, you might find yourself being subjected to co-payments. So in other words, make it your business to understand who is the designated service provider with your medical scheme or the option in which you are using. So prescribed minimum benefits are a guaranteed benefit. True, nothing about that, 100%. But with regard to the payments, it may be dependent on whether you are making use of designated service provider or not. What are prescribed minimum benefits? Some of such, it's like your chronic conditions. We've got 27 chronic conditions that are listed within the prescribed minimum benefits. And some of them, we are referring to your high blood pressures, your hypertension, your diabetes mellitus. We are referring to your high cholesterol. We are referring to your asthma, your epilepsy, your coronary artery diseases. These are the major chronic conditions that are within the prescribed minimum benefits. To close on that, we are saying prescribed minimum benefits are available on any scheme, irregardless of whether you are on the top option or you are on the lowest option, irregardless of whether you are on a hospital plan or you are on a comprehensive plan. So prescribed minimum benefits are available to anything that is called by the name of a medical aid. That is what we need to understand. Now, you heard we spoke about co-payments and so on. What else can we understand with regard to co-payments? Co-payments will be as a result of what we talk of medical schemes tariffs. In other words, medical aids, they pay according to specific tariffs. So there are certain rates that are determined by the medical schemes to say when a patient or when a member it is on such kind of medical condition, this is the rate that we are going to pay as a medical scheme. These things are very serious for us to understand because we need to be able to know, should I go and consult the doctor so and so, how much am I likely to pay? Will there be a co-payment? Now, we need to understand what are our medical schemes tariffs. And healthcare professionals, speaking of the tariffs, are not necessarily governed by the tariffs. They are not necessarily governed as to how much they can charge you. They can charge you whatever they deem necessary based on the circumstances, based on the time they spend with you, based on whatever that they are looking at in terms of treating you. However, medical schemes don't pay like that, but they pay according to tariffs, and these tariffs are predetermined. Now, if these tariffs are predetermined, we need to understand them. Now, the difference between what the medical aid or what the medical professional will charge and the tariff that the medical aid will pay will be the co-payment. So if the doctor charges you 1,000 rand, whereas the tariff based on the medical aid policy will be 500 rand for that type of condition, it means they are only going to pay 500 rand, which means if you are being charged 1,000 rand, you will be subjected to the other 500 rand difference. That's what we call a co-payment. To understand that further, we also need to understand the fact that we talk of medical aids paying 100% of tariffs, 200% of tariffs, 300% of tariffs. And these rates differences depend on the option that you are in on your medical scheme. The lower option might pay 100%, the middle option might pay 200%, and the top option might pay 300%, or whatever the case may be. But for this, it will be a good example to show. Now, what happens if my medical aid pays 100% tariff and the bill is 1,000 rand and the tariff is 500? That simply means that the rate above the tariff, you will be subjected to pay that to that service provider. That will be the co-payment. If my medical aid pays 200% tariff and the doctor charges 1,000 and the tariff is 500 and I'm on a 200% tariff, that means my medical aid will pay the full bill, since it will pay 200% of the 500 rand. That makes it 1,000 rand. If my medical aid pays 200% and the bill is 1,000, you can do the maths. Let us not be complicated, but what I want us to understand here is that there are different tariffs based on the option that you are in. It is very important for us to understand this, because often we go out there and say, my medical aid robbed me, or my medical aid, I don't understand how it works because the doctor charged me so much and they only paid so much. Let us simply understand that there are tariffs that medical aids pay according to, and let us understand such tariffs. Furthermore, some medical aids provide full cover when you make use of such designated benefits. So irrespective of the tariff that the doctor charges, when it is a doctor who is a DSP or a designated service provider, it doesn't matter what tariff he charges, the medical aid will pay him in full. What do I mean by this? Let us try to understand if our options or our specific medical aid have got certain or specific designated service providers within our area. Now, designated service providers will depend on areas, of course. If you are in Polokwane, for instance, there will be a list of doctors that are determined by the medical aid to be within the designated service provider register. If it is hospitals, well, fortunately or unfortunately, we've got two private hospitals in Polokwane. So one of those or both of them will be within the designated service providers. Go and find out with regard to your medical aid, which one among the hospitals, which ones among the doctors, which one among the chemists, it is within the designated service providers. I hope that makes sense with regard to the designated service providers and in relation to the co-payments. Let us move on. What else can we learn about medical aids? We are on our quest to understand how do our medical schemes operate. One of such, it is understanding the medical savings accounts. Medical savings accounts, it is that portion of our monthly premiums which is directed towards savings. Yes, medical schemes have got savings portion. Not all medical schemes, of course. There are hospital plans that will include medical savings account, and there are hospital plans that will not include the savings account. Also, there are comprehensive plans. By comprehensive plans, we are referring to plans that will include the day-to-day benefits. There are those that include the savings account, and there are those that do not include savings account. What do we need to understand about our savings account is that your savings account is not withdrawable. You cannot withdraw that cash that is lying in your savings account. But there are good things that you can do with your savings account. And one of those things is that it pays for your over-the-counter benefits. Over-the-counter benefits, we are referring to the benefits that you get from the chemist without having to have doctor's prescription. You just fall sick and you know what the condition is, you do not need a doctor to tell you or to diagnose or to do examination. You feel that this is a headache, or you know that I've got flu, but you need medication. You go simply and directly to the chemist and get such medication. That is what we call over the counter. Other things that savings accounts do is to pay for our day-to-day consultation where we do not have available funds for the day-to-day benefits. It could be because the day-to-day benefits is depleted, or simply it is not there. So like I said, you can have a hospital plan with a savings benefit. So hospital plan with a savings benefit, when you want to go and consult a doctor, you will use the funds within the savings accounts. Other things we need to understand about the savings accounts is that, like I said, it is not withdrawable. However, should you leave your medical aid and cancel it altogether, you are no longer a member of any medical aid, you can claim it to be paid back to you directly. So it can be paid into your bank account and you do whatever you want to do with it. Just make a phone call. May God richly bless you, and may He increase you and enlarge you in Jesus' name. Amen.